What's up to Lion Talk Live? So we love you too, buddy.
What's going on, guys? It is Aiden Hutchinson.
What's up, everybody? It's Calvin Johnson Jr. here, a.k.a. Megatron, a.k.a. First Ballot.
What's up, man? It's your boy Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Greetings and salutations to everyone out there in YouTube land. This is Dan Skipper, offensive weapon for the Detroit Lions. Make sure you all help support Lions Talk Live, Coach Dan, by clicking on that like and subscribe button. Everybody, woo!
I love nothing more than watching Lions Talk Live every morning. Woo!
Woo!
Well, greetings and salutations, everybody out there in YouTube land. I'm your host once again, Dan Thornton. I want to thank you all for joining us here today. Hey, Lions Talk Live, Tuesday morning show edition, and I think we've got a little bit of a something to talk about. Anybody who's watched this show for probably more than 15 seconds understands I've been a reporter for the vast majority of my adult life. Started in, I don't know, somewhere in the late 80s or whatever, early 90s, before going to full-time media, whether it be print media, journalism, on-air reporting, whatever. So as a number of you guys have reached out in the last week or two, asked for more kind of investigative reports, sort of like you got yesterday with the Brad Holmes experience, I've been working on this one for some time and kind of revisiting a story I've worked on, to be fair, probably since about 2000 to some degree, and really kind of kicked into high gear around 2007 or 8. We're going to dive into it because while many of us may have thought that Roger Goodell, his beef with the Ford family, the Detroit Lions, had kind of subsided in recent years, I think there's evidence to suggest it didn't, and we'll dive into that during the main topic of the day. Maybe sort of like Emperor Palpatine, he's been just kind of lurking in the shadows, moving things around, and yes, we'll dive into that, the Star Wars reference with Goodell Strikes Back, all that stuff during the main topic of the day. All right, before we get into the main topic of the day, we got 5 headlines down. We also, real quick, if you haven't yet subscribed to Lions Talk Live, please consider doing so, making that march for 13,900 subs. And if you can help out with that, I would be thankful. We're down to, I think it's 62 subs needed to get there. So, hey, if you got a free second of time, you haven't yet subscribed, please do that. Also, while you're hitting that subscribe button, reach on over, hit the thumbs up button, the like button. We try to get every episode of the show between 200, 300, 400 or more thumbs up or likes. Last but most certainly, never least, if you're considering buying or selling property anywhere in the great state of Michigan, you're looking for a house, I don't know, commercial property, whatever it may be, vacant land, you see my number, 269-998-2384. Give me a call. We'll have a conversation, and I'll try to use over 30 years in the industry, save you some hassle, save you some money, and make sure the process goes very easy for you. All right, I'm trying to speed through some of this stuff a little bit more today just so we can have a little bit more time for the main topic of the day, the Duke Crew comment section. And I believe Anthony from Roar Lions UK is going to join us at the halfway point of the show. So with all that done, set out of the way, let's get into 5 headlines now. All right, 5 headlines now coming your way. Lions rookie draws comp to one of the most underrated players in team history. Side Lion report, story by Brad Berryman. And you know what? When I first read this article, I was like, man, I don't know about it. But the more I got thinking about it, I think he might be right. I don't know how many of you will remember this name when I threw it out there, but Kevin Glover he probably, during the 90s, he was probably one of the more overlooked star Lion players out there because the guy was just Mr. Reliable on that offensive line. He was a prototypical Pro Bowler, All-Pro a few times. He got things done. Nobody ever noticed until he wasn't there. Glover, though, while he played with a ton of stars like Barry Sanders, Herman Moore, Chris Spielman, Benny Blades, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, Robert Porsche, amongst a gajillion other guys, those teams were pretty dang stacked. Glover sometimes did not get his just due. Now, while talking about Kevin Glover for this story, who are they comparing him to? You might have figured it out. If not, they think Tate Ratledge is a real good comparison to him. And to be honest, I don't think that's a bad comparison. This comes from Rob Gang of Fox Sports, who went through, a number of teams, went through their rookie classes and tried to find similar players in the past who would kind of be a good comparison, and he did come up with Kevin Glover. The Lions boast one of the NFL's better offensive lines, but going back to the last century, their play at the tackle and center has been better than at guard. Glover played 12 of his 15 seasons in the NFL at center, and each of his 3 Pro Bowl nods came in the pivotal part of his career with the Detroit Lions. But he did start 26 games over the 86 to 88 season at guard. Ratledge is a potential dominating blocker who, with greater durability, could also look to have a similar long-time pillar up front for the organization. So could he beat Kevin Glover? I think there's a lot of corroborating evidence. We're hearing more and more from coaching staff, people in national media, that the expectations for Tate Ratledge to be better and better than anticipated. I think when he was drafted, a lot of people across the league thought Ratledge would be a very good player in the league. But it does sound like some of those expectations are now starting to creep up. We may see his name again during the 5 headlines now. All right, Lions ranked as most aggressive offensive team in NFL, story by Bill Rossetti of Lions Wire, and this wasn't even close. Well, for those who don't know, there's a stat for everything nowadays. There's a stat for the stat. But yes, one of the stats that has emerged in recent years is known as the Z-score. Now you're going to say, Dan, what is a Z-score? Well, let me help you out here. It moderates or regulates watches, breaks down, however you want to term it, provides an analytical component for just how aggressive a team goes for in different situations. Are they bombing it downfield all the time? Great. Are they sending 29 guys on the blitz? Great. Are they, you get it. Are they going for it on 5th down? You get it. It just puts into a mathematical equation just how aggressive a team is. Detroit's Z-score on a scale out of 5 was a 4.73. And this was by far a full point or more higher than the next team on the list. Can you guess that team? If not, hey, let me tell you, I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. It was in the NFL. It was the Washington Commanders, a full point higher than them. Those 2 teams were also the only 2 teams to score above 3. The Buffalo Bills were 3rd on the list at 2.8. So let that sink in. On a scale from 1 to 5, Detroit Lions were nearly a 5. And the 3rd team on the list, the Buffalo Bills, who's I don't think anybody would say they're conservative, but they were 2.8. Detroit Lions on offense were simply, or I guess you'd say offense or defense, were just simply an aggressive team last year. I think some of that would be a reflection of the injuries to the defense last year. We all know to replicate or to produce consistent pressure, Lions had to typically send 5 to 6 guys after the quarterback. They did it with reckless abandon. It worked to a certain degree. It didn't work at certain degrees, but what we can get is it did get them the North title again, a 15-2 record. And yeah, I know everybody's going to say, hey, well, you lost to the Washington Commanders. Well, you know what? A lot of good teams. I can think of a lot of good teams that made it to the postseason and lost. The only thing I can say for the Lions is, hey, all those injuries eventually caught up to them, along with some other stuff we'll be talking to you guys about during the main topic of the day. All right. Detroit Lions wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown makes enemies of the Chiefs with disparaging remarks about Kansas City on his podcast. A to Z Sports, story by Nick Roshan. So, hey, I don't think this is a big deal, but I get to some people it is. When you are in front of the public, when you are, a movie star, a TV show host, a pro athlete, a politician, or anything in between, if you have people paying attention to the words that come out of your mouth, you need to be careful what those words are unless you're not really worried about the repercussions. I don't think, St. Brown really meant this as a huge issue, but you know what? Some people obviously took it as such. Talking to a couple different people on his most recent podcast, he did talk to Texans wide receiver and Kansas City native Jalen Noel, a wide receiver, by the way, in case you didn't know, talking to him about Kansas City. And here is the quote from St. Brown. Quote, I've been to Kansas City. I was there for the draft. Bro, I'm sorry. If you got money, I'm not living here after I get some money. St. Brown is not high on the Kansas City, I guess you could say the city of Kansas City's I guess favorite sons list at this point. He did specifically go on to say if he could live anywhere, it's not Kansas City. He's not even putting it in his top 20 list, apparently. So is this a big deal? Probably not. But you know what? At least for the next 48 hours of news cycle, it's probably going to be up there. St. Brown's not going to lose any endorsement deals, I would think, over that quote. But let's also be fair. When the Lions play Kansas City, the Kansas City fans are going to remember it. It's a chip on their shoulder. Maybe the players use it. Maybe it's bulletin board material. And me, myself, as a coach, I don't want to give anybody bulletin board material. I feel like enough teams kind of shoot themselves in the foot that you don't need to try to help them out. Only thing I would say to St. Brown is maybe trying to try to clarify that comment in the offseason here. Try to do something good to take away some of that bulletin board material, that chip on the shoulder that the Chiefs may now have for that. Great quote comes today from Napoleon Bonaparte. If you guys remember Napoleon from history, he had a great quote I've always remembered. When your enemies are making mistakes, don't interrupt them. So you know what? Don't help out the Kansas City Chiefs with any quotes. All right, next story here, and I promised you guys would be talking about him twice during the 5 headlines now. Tate Ratledge projected to earn major honor during rookie season with the Lions. Max DeMar of Side Lion report with this one, and I agree with it. Here's a question for the Duke crew. Anybody watching this live or later on, is he starting to become the biggest Lions rookie projection going into this year? As far as expectations for the way he's going to produce, what he's going to do on the field. I would think there seems to be more and more evidence, and this story does kind of point that out. It's nothing against Williams. I think he's going to be just fine. We just haven't really seen much from him yet because they are kind of being real cautious with his injury to his leg, etc., with the hamstring. We'll find out what happens with some of the other guys in the rookie classes. I know Hassanin has huge expectations. Tesla probably to some degree, but it does seem like Tate Ratledge is projected to have a monster Detroit Lions rookie season that he may start either at center or guard, and he may be pretty dang good. When the Lions drafted him, it is also being confirmed more and more that people within the organization were anticipating that Frank Ragnow was going to retire. Remember, we only traded up a couple spots, and we gave up a bit to move up those spots in order to acquire him. The reasoning behind that, it does seem like it's correlated with Frank Ragnow's retirement. Also, a couple of the teams right before us and right behind us apparently were also trying to trade up to get him. So Lions got into a bidding war for him. When going through this, there's a bunch of different quotes. If you guys want to check out the story, please go ahead and do it. According to NFL.com analyst, I'm going to kill his name, Geronimo Felice, Ratledge will be on the list for all pro rookies, he believes, at center or guard in 2025. And he does believe the Lions are going to start him, maybe not the entire year at center, but he thinks pretty early in the season you're going to see him switch to center and he'll take over. This guy apparently is spent a lot of time with him, and this is from NFL.com, watching the Lions, talking to Brad Holmes, talking to people within the Lions organization. His personal opinion is that Ratledge is the real deal, the real McCoy, and he is going to have an impact monster season for the Lions. Dan Campbell hits Ratledge could be ready for a fast impact. We talked about this last week when he had his press conference. Dan Campbell went on, mentioned Ratledge, amongst other players, let's be fair, talked about some of his flexibility on the offensive line, what he brings to the table. You know what? Here's what I can say. I don't know what they're going to do with him. I just know he's going to be on the field, and I do think he's going to be a day one starter for the team, either at guard or center. And the expectations seem to be up and away for this kid. All right, last of the 5 headlines now. 5 Lions predictions that will come true before 2025 season. Detroit parts way with multiple recent draft picks. A to Z Sports, story by Mike Payton. All right, let's dive into this one because I see we're already going on for a minute with the 5 headlines now. All right, number 1 of the predictions, probably not a big surprise here to anybody watching this show or just Lions content in general. Zadarius Smith will be back. He believes it's just a golden, matter of time until Smith signs on the dotted line and comes on back. But he's hearing from multiple sources. This is Mike Payton, the person who penned the story. He's hearing from multiple sources. It's just a good old-fashioned confidence that, hey, Zadarius Smith is going to re-sign with the Lions. He just wants some time off this summer for multiple reasons. That's a direct quote from Mike Payton. All right, next on the predictions, Isaac Tesla supplants Tim Patrick for the number 3 wide receiver spot. And I personally think, yes, this will happen, but you're also talking about middle or later of this upcoming season. Who knows? Maybe this kid really has an S on his chest and flies around or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's the flowing hair, but I think at some point, yes, Tesla with his speed, his size, he is going to supplant Tim Patrick as the number wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. But in my personal thought, you're probably looking around, I don't know, somewhere around Thanksgiving, right around there, that might happen. And it has no disrespect for Tim Patrick. It's just Tim Patrick, because time has not been kind to his body, has robbed him of some of his speed. We all know he's had injuries to the knees, and that's how the Lions ultimately required him, is because the Denver Broncos moved off of him. But Tim Patrick, I think, is a real weapon. I don't know when it will happen this year. I just think the Lions are better for it, because now you talk about your top 4 receivers. Those are pretty good dudes. And if Khalif Raymond holds on, you know what? You got 5 real good ones. Who knows from there? Wait and see if Dominic Lovick or someone else really holds water. All right, Jackson Meeks is the fan favorite undrafted free agent. I disagree with this one, because I just don't know if there's anybody knows enough about him other than the fact he's Zadarius Smith's nephew, etc. Is he even going to make the 53-man roster? I don't think so. But you know what? Maybe he balls out in preseason games and gives the Lions a reason to keep him. Lions add another quarterback is the next of the 5 predictions here. I've been talking about this. I know you guys have been talking about it. Mike Payton breaks it down. He thinks the Lions have a real shot at signing UFL MVP and Michigan Panthers quarterback Bryce Perkins. I don't know if this is going to happen. Lauren, if you're in the comment section, you probably have more information about that than anybody else. So throw your thoughts in the comment section if you're around this morning. I think everybody would be thankful for it. I don't also think the Lions would be in a bad spot asking Bryce Perkins or anybody else the quarterback battle, because as we talked about a few days ago on the show, it does sound like there's a lot of trepidation between, Kyle Adams, Hendon Hooker. Somebody really has got to own that number 2 spot. I'm rooting for Hendon Hooker. To be fair, I'm rooting for anybody who's out on the field for the Lions, because you want that team to produce competition, produce a better player on the field. Let's hope one of them can do it. And then the last of these 5 predictions, the Lions part ways with multiple recent draft picks. He goes through a list here, and some of them are going to be no-brainers. Broderick Martin's going to be on this list. Colby Sorsdale's on this list. Dominic Lovett, man, I don't know. I hope this kid can do it. Obviously, he is a very recent draft pick for the team, but we were just talking about it. We gave you names for 5 different solid wide receivers for the Detroit Lions. Are they going to really keep a 6th? I don't know. If you put any of these guys in the practice squad, I do think they'll be poached. Even Broderick Martin, as unproductive as he's been, hasn't lived up to the hype. Somebody else in the NFL is going to say, hey, it doesn't cost us anything. The kid's hugely athletic and big. We're going to bring him in and see if we can coach him up where they couldn't. We'll see what shakes out. All right, well, all that done, set out of the way. Let's get this show moving to the next segment, and that is the main topic of the day. I think we're going to have a little fun with this. Let me tell you, in the office today, it's feeling pretty hot, by the way. I've got fans on me and everything, but yeah, all these lights, all these computers, it's getting a little warm in here. All right, with all that done, though, if I asked you guys, if you watch the show, and some of you guys I know have been Lions fans for a long time, would you honestly, in your unbiased opinion, don't just be a Lions fan, just look at the Lions as objectively you can, would you say in the last 15 or 20 years, you felt like Roger Goodell, the NFL, have kind of hosed the Detroit Lions? Let's Scooby-Doo that for a second. I think if I said the process of the catch, you would think the Lions got hosed on that. For those who don't know, and I got to imagine most of you know, Kelvin Johnson appeared to be a game-winning touchdown late. I think there was like 15 seconds left or something like that in Chicago against the Bears. And while the referees on the field all ruled it a touchdown, all of a sudden, magically, from New York, we get a phone call. Somebody calls down to the field and says, nah, it's not a touchdown. He didn't complete the process of the catch. I can go through about 18 different situations that have happened prior to last year where everybody would say, yeah, the Lions got hosed. If we had all talked about in the last year or two that maybe Goodell and the NFL no longer had a burning issue or wanted to, stab the Lions in the back, however you want to word it, you probably say, all right, yeah, in recent years, it's calmed down. Well, let's think about that. Go back 2 years ago when the Lions played and the Dallas Cowboys. And, we all know the report gate, however you want to term it. Taylor Decker goes on the field along with Dan Skipper, reports eligible. You can clearly see it clear as day. Decker is, signaling to the officials. Officials somehow don't see it or mishear it or whatever it is, and we all remember that. Last year, though, let me ask you this, and this is where you dive in with some investigative reporting. Do you feel like the Lions got hosed? Anything egregious like the process of the catch or, whatever other situation you want to come up with? If you couldn't think of anything egregious like that, you wouldn't be alone. But let the analytics tell you differently. All right, let's start with this as far as we dive into all this. Who is the number one team in the NFL to be flagged for defensive pass interference? I'll give you 3 seconds here. 1, 2, 3. If you said the Washington Commanders, you would be right. Who is number 2, though? All right, you probably guessed it. The Detroit Lions. Detroit was flagged for defensive pass interference 19 times in 18 games, including the playoffs. And yes, I get everybody's going to say, all right, well, that's Terrion Arnold. That's a rookie corner out there against some all-world, all-pro receivers. He got picked apart a lot. Well, that would be true. Let me also break down the numbers for you. Does everybody know what the pool report is? If not, I guess I'll educate you. The pool report is after the game, the lead official for that crew goes out and they review some things. Then the NFL reviews some things. In a nutshell, they come back a couple days later and say, here's where we were wrong. Here's where we were right, yada, yada. Who led the league by 30% in the pool reports or the reviews days after the games? Calls against the team being viewed and saying, maybe we got that wrong. 30%. That's a high number, guys. And yes, in case you didn't know, it was the Detroit Lions. Now, why do I bring that up? It doesn't mean that, just because our official gets a call wrong doesn't mean it's anything egregious. It does happen. They are human. The problem becomes the next highest team is 18%. The team after that is 17 and like a half percent. I don't have I didn't do all the math on it. Sorry about that, guys. But the average is right around 15 to 16%. So why is it the Detroit Lions have an over 10% advantage, I guess you can say, over these, calls that were reviewed? Go back to the playoff game. The Lions were flagged 8 times and then day for it. And I think you guys get it. The Commanders received 5 flags. Out of the Commanders' 5 flags, guess what? 4 of them were reviewed and said they should not have been calls. Now, take it a step further. Were there calls that could have affected the game, that changed the game, that weren't called? I get you're all going to jump in and say, well, the hit on Jared Goff. So what are you starting to see per this report? And I want to give credit where credit's due. NFL Penalties is a website apparently where they review all this stuff. I'm going to give credit for a lot of their investigative journalism on this. I also want to give credit to Jeff Risdon of Lions Wire for adding to this. He's got a couple pieces that aren't exactly related to this main topic, but you get it. They kind of go into it. And you got the NFL pool reports. Naturally, the NFL doesn't want a lot of this stuff. I mean, they put it out there for you, me, everybody to digest, but they also don't want it to be headline news because, it's not good for any professional sports league to say, hey, we messed up and we, may have changed the game. Where I have egregiousness with this, both as a coach and a journalist, is when you have over a 10% disparity between team number 1 and team number 2, that starts to show bias in my eyes. It doesn't have to in your eyes. It does in my eyes, though, especially with the long history of me reporting on Roger Goodell. For those who don't know, when Goodell took over the NFL in late 2007, that's where the Lions, who almost never before that got so many, odd calls, egregious calls. I mean, however you want to put it, the Dallas Cowboy playoff game in 2014, where the Lions more or less had the game won. He threw a touchdown or threw a pass to Brandon Peregrew down the middle left side of the field. It's clear as day to anybody and their mother. I don't care what team you represent and cheering for. Brandon Peregrew is tackled WWE style. And you know what? Pass interference. Then all of a sudden a call comes in from up above, not from the field, not from the people up above the field, but from New York. It's not a pass interference. We're picking it up. And in regards to Dez Bryant and a bunch of other Cowboys coming on the field without a helmet, coming on the field as offensive players during a play, you know what? Somehow we're not throwing that flag either. I'm not going to spend all day with it. You get it. But Roger Goodell has been long noted to have an issue with the Detroit Lions, the Ford family, because they didn't back him on removing the Thanksgiving Day game from Detroit and make it a rotational piece across teams. Lions put up a big fight. They won, kind of embarrassed Goodell. I'm not going to spend all day on it. But what we're starting to see here is Roger Goodell, and this is why I went with Goodell strikes back. In my opinion, the more you break down this information, maybe Goodell figured out a way to make it less apparent. Maybe he and the NFL have a beef with the Detroit Lions. I think just about everybody who watched last year's Washington Commander game, yeah, I get it. You know, you shouldn't probably have Jameson Williams throwing a deep pass downfield on some trickeration play in a meaningful portion of the game where you were making a pretty good comeback. You know, I get there's a lot of other factors, but when you break down these different analytic reports from different websites, Lions might have got jobbed a little bit, but in a more subtle way. The hit on Goff, okay, we all get that. How any of the officials didn't see it, or anybody above in the Jumbotron or in New York, you know, that's a big mystery. But when you break down how many of their penalties were deemed not penalties and how Washington got away with penalties, now go throughout all last year for Detroit. Here's one thing I would say, both as a reporter, a fan, or coach. When you win, people don't pay attention to stuff nearly as much. Did the Lions win last year despite Goodell and the NFL's efforts? The more you break down this information, I think you're correct if you say the Lions won despite perhaps some biased refereeing. And I could probably do a 2-hour show on this, breaking it all down, but we got about 4 minutes until Anthony, I think, jumps on today. The more I dove into these different reports, studied the numbers the last week, I think where Goodell is, I've had the notion, I've talked to you guys about it, maybe he's no longer angry with the Detroit Lions because, you know what, they're making the league money. But the more you look at this, and then you go back the year prior, 2024, I think, or 23-24, you guys get it, the season before, I think there's a lot of evidence to be had that maybe Goodell, instead of being more blatant with the bad calls, was trying to be more subtle. Although the year before, you could say down in Dallas, that was pretty dang blatant. Because again, the guys on the field ruled one thing at one point, got the call above, you guys get it. But I think there's a lot of things to be said here that Goodell, the NFL, might still have a beef with the Detroit Lions, the Ford family, everybody in between. The simple issue is the Lions are good enough to overcome these things. What will happen this year? I think we're all going to want to pay attention to it the upcoming season, because if this holds water, if this is accurate and true, and right now I have no reason to doubt in it because math is math. You know, if you're leading the league by over 10%, whatever the number was, 13% between you and the second place team for erroneous calls being made or, you know, just reverse, hey, that shouldn't have been a call. That's a large margin, a very large margin in my opinion. All right, I've been rambling way too long on this topic and other topics. Let's get over to you guys for a few before Anthony gets here. But I may try to do in the next week or so, do a deeper dive on this, put a video out, not a live, and just have you guys watch it. I'll see if I can get some more information for everybody. All right, Michael, greetings, salutations, coach and Duke Crew, exclamation point, one pride, woo, and back at you, Bo, good morning, Duke Crew. Some people just have issues, woo, and I agree. Hey, we all got issues, though, let's be honest. Just say, Kay, what did we get hit with now? And question mark, I swear that guy doesn't like us. No, I think there's a lot of evidence to support that more and more. JDC, morning all, and same to you. Jess, greetings, salutations, Duke Crew. Goodell has had something against the Ford family for a long time. Yeah, I agree 100%. Got to play through it, though. Yeah, there's really nothing you can do. He's the dude in control. He is the emperor in this situation, as you probably got the Star Wars reference from the headline today. But what do? You just keep fighting through. You keep winning. And the more I study this information, the fact that we won 15 games last year, that speaks volumes to what the Lions have as far as the talent, the coaching. Maybe you can even see the front office. Jim, I've not heard anything positive about AA's return. I haven't heard anything really, what's it been, like a couple weeks, as far as information on Alex Anzalone. So maybe it's all kind of dying down. Henry Moore, good morning, Coach Dan and Duke Crew. What a team! Exclamation point! What a podcast! What a time to be a Lions fan! Woo! Ouch! I had a molar extracted yesterday. Still tender. No, I don't take drugs for pain. I'm with you on that, man, and hopefully it just gets better and better every day for you, Henry, and then you get through it. Drake, I see what you did there, Coach. Yeah, Goodell is the emperor of the NFL. He really is, man. If he doesn't like you, your team, your policies, everything in between, he can come after you, and there's really not a whole lot you can do about it other than say, hey, play through the issue, go to the next play, go to the next game. Be better than the calls, I guess. Robert, I would like to nominate Jason Berry for the inaugural Dew Crew Hall of Fame. His tree of destiny is inspiring! Exclamation point. I'll go with that. Stephanie, good morning, boys! Exclamation point. Overcome the issue and move forward because that's how winning is done. That sounds like some Rocky Balboa speech right there. Johnny, good morning, folks. Hope all is well with everyone here, and same to you. France, good day all. Just signed Z, and this team is complete. Prove me wrong. All right, we'll see what we can do. Jason, Hall of Fame, question mark. Well, let's not get carried away. Go Lions. Hey, somebody's got to get in, right? Let's see. Bo, is he Palpatine or Vader? Ooh, good question. Clark, yo, Palpatine. Vader was always more of a hitman. Yeah, I'll go with that. He was the henchman. There you go. All right, guys, it is halfway through the show. Let's go over and get on our special guest today. You love him. You know him. He's the guy from the other side of that big thing of water between us and them. Let's go over to get to Anthony, Roar Lions UK. Anthony, good day to you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, Dan. Thanks. Hope you are well. Hope the Dew crew are well. And yeah, glad it all works this week.
Hey, I guess I figured out what was wrong, but I just can't believe I need to, do whatever I had to do to fix it. But hey, whatever it is. Let's talk about some Lions stuff, not technical stuff, because we got a Lions show here. So the vast majority of my life, it felt like Roger Goodell kind of had an issue with the Detroit Lions. When I've done so many different stories over the decades on this, it always felt like the Lions in the 80s, 70s, 90s, 2000s never had erroneous calls. I mean, every team has a bad call hit them here and there, but it's just nothing at the rate that the Lions suffered through from roughly 2008 until, I guess you could throw in last year. In your opinion, do you think that's just luck that the Lions get some of these bad situations, or do you think the NFL / Roger Goodell has some level of beef with the team?
I mean, it's very hard. I mean, we have been on the end of some very bad calls over the years, and it does feel like they have had it out for us a little bit, especially now. We've traditionally been the bad team, the one who's down on its luck, and now we're getting good. We're defying expectation, and we are kind of a little bit resilient in the way we work. Brad drafts his picks quickly despite being told not to. You can tell there's a little bit of friction there between the teams. But I think in general, I think you look around the league, I think the standard of ref in a minute has been some of the worst we've ever seen. And I don't think it's unique to just us. Obviously, we feel the ones that hit us the most because obviously They impact us the most, but I watch quite a lot of other games as well, and it's noticeable in them games. It's like, there's just the standard's not up to it at the minute. So I think it's a ref problem so much as a league problem with us. Like, the standards need to get better there. Like, I think the chain gangs are no more as of next year. We use an electronic marking, stuff like that. That is hopefully going to start balancing the playing field and stop some of these bad calls being made. Because I know specifically with the chain gang, we've been screwed a bit over the years. So we'll see. But yeah, I think it's a league-wide problem that needs fixing.
Okay. I don't know if you were able to hear me talk about it earlier. I tried to do some work for a few days on this story before getting here. I didn't want to go through a Lions history of bad calls, but just looking at last year, the fact that there is over a 10% gap in correctable calls between the Detroit Lions and the number 2 team, does that seem like a large amount to you, or do you think that's just unlucky if you're a Detroit Lion that there's that big a gap between how many calls refs after the game is over go back and say, yes, this was an incorrect call, that's an incorrect call? 10% between team 1 leading the league, the Lions, and team 2. That seems like a bit of a call to me, but what are your thoughts?
You can't argue with the stats, and then you look at some of the more egregious calls that have been made against us, like the whole skipper ineligible, fiasco we had the other year. Like, when it was clear on camera that we had done what we were meant to do there, and that the ref was just covering his own tracks because he'd been spotted with it. I think in there somewhere, I don't know what it's very hard to say, let's go and be inherently biased against the team. But I don't know. Maybe it's just the style we play, because we play quite an aggressive game, don't we? Like, I felt a lot of the calls that Terrion was getting last year early, the DPIs, I thought were harsh. Like, really harsh, some of them. Yeah. I know he racked up some blatant ones, but there was somewhere there was barely any contact. And, without knowing the stats, it feels like we get a load of illegal contact penalties as well, which are also, quote unquote, very suspicious as to how they're done. So, yeah, I think maybe there might be a little something there again with the changes that have been made this year. We'll see whether that evens out or not. But historically, when you think of famous reffing incidents, we are more than not in that conversation. So people are right to be skeptical about it.
Well, you bring up the point about Taylor Decker, skipper, going out there and reporting. If I remember correctly, I don't have it in front of me. I want to say the refs try to bail themselves out by saying, "Hey, the Lions just made it too confusing by sending two guys to him." Even though, as you said, you can clearly see one of them reporting. So the ref maybe got caught up in the moment. Who knows? But let's go back to last year in the playoff game. We all, through the advantage of watching at home, not feeling any stress or pressure, we can see the blow to Goff's head on that interception. It would appear there, when you watch the video, there are 2 or 3 officials right there with eyes on it. Why do you think the Lions didn't get that particular call?
I don't know. That was unexplainable, and that knocked him up pretty good as well. It could explain why the play sort of dropped off a little bit after that. It's there've just been some really bad ones, and again, I can't get in the heads of what they're thinking at the time, what it's all about. But there's been, I can think of was it years ago when Tracy Walker sacked Kirk Cousins, and they said he landed on him and he clearly rolled and tucked as he was meant to, and there were 3 guys watching that clearly, and it was still called on us. It's I don't know. I think maybe the way we play football, we're quite physically aggressive, and that it might lead them to sort of even it out and say, well, look, if you're going to give it out this much, we're maybe going to accept a certain bit of leeway back in the other direction. It feels like we're very close on that boundary with the issue. Maybe that's why they're doing it. I don't know, but certainly it's something that's I'm going to watch it very closely this year as well to see what's going on. But I would say a lot of other fan bases might have this same argument as well, that a lot of stuff gets called that shouldn't, and vice versa, especially in prime time stuff like that. The Chiefs, especially, like some of the calls they get are just outright, criminal. And we see that on a weekly basis.
Well, to your point, the Lions are, I think I was talking about it during the 5 headlines now before you hopped on. There's the Z score for the Lions, or for everybody in the NFL. Lions Z score, how aggressive are you as a team? A 5 is like you're over the top or whatever. The Lions are near a 5. The third place team was under a 3. So I get what you're saying. The Lions are highly aggressive. Now, to your point also with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, if that hit on Patrick, or that happened to Jared Goff against the Commanders, happens to, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, they're probably publicly executing that defender. Why is it you think Goff doesn't maybe get some of the same calls as some of the other better quarterbacks?
I mean, money, right? You've got to protect your money men, especially in these hair pressure situations. And a lot of time, this is on prime time, so the world's seeing you want to protect your guys, especially. There's been a lot of QB injuries. It feels like there's been more than usual the last few years. A lot of guys have been out missing significant chunks of time. So, it feels like maybe they're going too far the other way and trying to protect them. But I think there's always going to be specific favorites for things like that. The money boys, the guys who bring the revenue into the league. Goff ain't a sexy name in this league. So, and I think there's some other unsexy names. You see it happen to guys like Baker and stuff like that who are in the same mold, these tough, gritty guys who can almost think, oh, you know what, they can take it. They're tough. They'll get back up, but we're not going to call that. It's just all very subjective. It seems so many of these rules are subjective to the ref's opinion as opposed to being blanket rules, which are just enforce it. It seems like a lot of them are just going, oh, well, maybe, that a little bit of personal opinion going into this when maybe they shouldn't be.
Okay. Now, with all this being said, maybe questionable this, questionable that, opinions, interpretations. At the end of the day, here's what we can say. The Lions, despite all the injuries, questionable calls, leading by 13% over any other team in the league as far as they got calls after the game that were reviewed and said, hey, shouldn't have been a call or whatever. Lions still went 15-2 with all that going against them. In your opinion, is this more corroborating evidence to just how good the team is or can be going forward to this year?
I mean, Dan's mantra is just, you've got to take these things, you've got to take outside aspects out of the game. So the refs, you've got to make them a non-factor in the game. If there's a bad call against you, you just go back out there and you make sure they're not an impact on the game. With injuries, he's never once blamed injuries for lack of performance. It's like you go out there and you play. It's the mantra he's put into this team. There are no excuses. There are no days when you're like, oh, the starting quarterback's gone down, we can coast and just lose this one. Like, that mentality is not there whatsoever. You know, they could be down to their last fit 22 guys who are playing, and that's it. And they will not use it as an excuse. They will go out there. So it's the mentality. And that's the deep root thing. And that's what all these, you know, that's what the rest of the NFC North don't understand. They think the coordinators are gone, Ben's gone, they're going to fold. It's not necessarily the play calling which makes this team so good. It's the mentality of this team which makes it so good and so dangerous, because they're going to outfight you. They are going to last longer than you. And no matter how much pressure you put them under, they're not going to buckle. So, you know, still going to 15 wins with all those injuries of that, it's a sign of the mentality. You've got to have a deep, strong mentality to be able to withstand all those injuries and all that. And the schedule wasn't easy either, and still be able to win it all. So, it does not surprise me in the slightest. You know, it's because you can't, you know, you've got to install that mentality over years. It takes years of hard work and dedication to get to that point. So I've no worries, and there's no surprise to me the team continues to do well despite being faced with all these odds. It's what they're built for, and eventually that is what will lead them to a Super Bowl.
There was some speculation now that the UFL season's over, Lions could potentially go after, try to find another quarterback, you know, try to create more competition. I don't know if you've seen him at all, but Bryce Perkins, the MVP quarterback for the league, do you think the Lions need to take a look at him or somebody else to bring in before training camp to maybe try to get a little bit more competition in that backup role?
I think that they need to. I mean, I thought Kyle Allen was doing that job. I've not heard much about him recently, though, so maybe he's tailed off. But absolutely, the backup QB position, Hendon Hooker needs pushing to his absolute limits, because you know, we need a good option there. Again, we've been quite blessed on the injury front, especially on the offense. So we've not had to deal with this. But we've seen with the injury, you know, with the retirement of Frank, we are now scrambling because there's no backup plan there. You know, right. we're having to scramble and reassemble an entire new interior because we've not taken the care to make sure there's a long-term strategy in there right away. It's going to be the same with the QB. If no one's ready, because law of averages is Goff is going to miss some games eventually. Like he's missed precious little for us, but the law of averages says at some point we're going to need someone else in to help. So, you know, you keep bringing in guys and pushing them until Hendon's ready and they've got the confidence in him, because quite clearly now they don't. So if they need to bring some more guys in to push him, then fine. I don't know whether UFL guys are going to do it. Like the UFL, I think, you know, with your special teams and stuff like that, we've seen with Bates and everyone's going, oh, can everyone do it now? Not necessarily. Special teams, I'm not saying it's easier, but it's easier to transition than a QB to starting in this league and to, you know, putting in serious roster on teams. So maybe if you want to bring him in, try him out. I think, was he on the Rams roster when Holmes was there? I don't know if he was. He probably was, actually. So he might know him. I think he was on the Rams roster, right? A long time ago, Perkins, when he started.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I think him and Holmes have worked together, so the relationship's obviously there from past. So if he ends up here, I won't be surprised. But yeah, I would expect to see more QBs in potentially for training camp.
All right, so we are basically a month away from training camp beginning. Now that we're getting into this, you know, final few weeks before it hits, what are some of the bigger camp position battles that you're looking forward to watching?
I mean, the offensive line's the first one. You know, seeing how people fight there, that's our bread and butter, and we've got to see people emerge from that quickly and get into routine, get into rhythm. Ideally, whoever's going to start at center needs to start there from day one in training camp. You want to give them as much time in there as possible to learn the role and get as many snaps as possible, and then go into the preseason and do so. Whoever's going to play center this year needs to play the entire preseason there, as far as I'm concerned, just to get the, you know, it's vital. You don't know what you've got with these positions. Like, we just think, you know, we've had elite center play for the last 7 years now. We've forgotten what it's like to have a dicky center and for things to not go right there. And it can really mess a team up. We see it every year. So, I'm looking forward to seeing that, especially the defensive line. Some edge has got to stand up. Like, somebody has got to start making waves. We need someone opposite Hutch. Devon, sick note has got to finally start trying to stay healthy and not be injured again. Hassanin, it's going to be big for him. Pascal, this is his contract year, and at the minute, he's not done enough to stay on this roster. Like, he's fighting for a roster spot in 12 months. Need to see a lot better from him. But someone has to step up and take that bookend opposite Hutch. It is vital for us this year. And with the D tackles, it's the same as well. We need someone in there next to Reader. We need someone to come through because we need both trenches to be, that's been our bread and butter the last 2 years. Elite run defense, elite run game because of the trenches. So we just need to decide those battles more than anything. Outside of that, you're looking at depth in the linebacker roles. The corner room could be interesting because obviously we've got a lot of guys in, a lot of competition there now. Are we going to move some of them to safety to help with the safety depth room? Are we going to move them? I'd be interested to see if they start switching positions with anybody and moving someone to safety to help there and give some reps. So there's a lot of questions to be had. I mean, outside of the rest of the offensive positions, I think we're fine. It's just the O-line, but defense, there's a lot to look for.
All right, Anthony. I want to thank you for coming on, as you do every Tuesday, trying to give us your insight, your expert opinion. Why don't you go ahead and give yourself a shout out and tell everybody where they can find you, support you, your channel, your content, and study more about the Roar Lions UK.
Yeah, as I mentioned, you can find me at Roar of the Lions UK. We're a group of Detroit Lions fans from across the pond. So if you want to come and hear about your Lions news and views, etc., from a British perspective, then come check us out. We're live on Mondays usually, do a college podcast on Wednesdays, which will be on tomorrow. So if you like college ball, come chat with us about that. We're live during the games. So yeah, you can find me there, Roar of the Lions UK. As always, thanks, Dan. Thanks to you, crew. Hope you have a wonderful day. We're in the midst of a heat wave here at the minute, so I'm going to go outside before I melt because I don't do hot weather very well. So, hopefully it's a lot cooler over there for you guys.
Unfortunately, it is not. It's like 90-something today, and I think it might get close to 100. And it is what it is, man. You're going to have to survive. All right, my friend. Go have a great day. Try to not melt, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care. We'll see you later. Bye.
We'll see you now. All right, Duke Crew, I got to get out here a little early today just for some work-related stuff. But, hey, if there is breaking news later today, I'll get over to you as quick as possible. If you would be so kind before checking out, hit the thumbs up button, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the button for the button for the button. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Do something kind for someone you don't know. And we'll see you guys all in the next Lions Talk Live. Take care, everybody.
Excuse me, sir, would you... Donations to Reverend Moon? Jews for Jesus? Read about Jehovah's Witness? How about Buddhism? How Jerry's kids? Oh, yeah. Scientology? Or nuclear power?